No, you don't need the.
I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Talking on it though, then
He
you
a
can't put it up
legend.
later.
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and today we are going to create I'm going to reveal my mid lane ranking for the World Championship. Now, before I click over to the tier list, I want to prepare everyone to be upset because apparently I have a difference of opinion on a lot of league strength things, as well as the role that mid plays in League of Legends, and just a lot of I don't think about League of Legends the way that you may think about League of Legends, and that's okay. If you'd like to give me a well thought out reason for why I'm wrong, I'm more than happy to respond to comments. But that's basically that. Let's talk quickly about what I expect from mid lane at the World Championships. So, there will be teams punished for blind picking with things like Kassadin. It will happen. We will see some ridiculous Kassadin games, and people will overreact. I'm fairly certain that every single mid laner at the World Championship could go off on a Kassadin match if their team wins the game. It is not very difficult to do. It's just about surviving long enough. That's really it. I think Akali will be very important, even after the nerfs, because now that players have the taste of Akali, they're going to keep playing Akali. I think TF will be a bad pick at the World Championships because a lot of the lesser teams will place a high priority on it and then lose with it. We will probably see some of the better teams use it to exacerbate the macro differences between the teams. Like, it just makes it even more difficult for the other team to play when you have this like pseudo split pick composition with TF. So I would expect it to happen, and I do expect TF to get some wins, but it's going to be when a better team beats a lesser team. Now, it's going to be tough to identify which one is the better team and lesser team going into the matchup for some of you out there, but I think that it'll be pretty clear when there are TF bait situations. Azir, Zoe are both going to be pretty popular, I'm sure, even after the Azir nerfs. I think Aurelia has a chance to show up in the mid lane, especially because of the existence of Akali. Who else? There are definitely more. Mid Jace might see some play. It typically does. Corki is probably coming back. Corki's around at every World Championship. So that's just the kind of stuff that we need to anticipate. The reason I released my mid lane list before my jungle list is because I think that the mid lane is probably the closest from the best to the worst player at the World Championship. Relative to the other positions. I think the talent disparity at other positions is greater, is basically what I'm trying to say. Now, that doesn't mean that I think Jensen is close to Showmaker or Knight, because I don't think that. So with that being said, jungle will come next. That is the most important position in League of Legends right now is jungle. So that's the next video. Watch out for that one. But let's just get to the list. And like I said, sorry in advance. There will be some tears. Okay, so the 3 worst mid laners at the World Championship, in my opinion, are Jensen, Mission, and Nemesis. I think that Nemesis is clearly the weak link on Fnatic at this point. I think that Bwipo's champion versatility is better for the team. I think that Selfmade's carry potential is better for the team. I think that Nemesis, there are some matchups where Nemesis will like be helpful, but when you're going up against the caliber of mid lane that is going to be at the World Championship, you're going to have a lot of mid lane matchups champion wise that are not it's not going to be easy for him to play in any of these matches because most of the time mid lane is blind picked. So unless they're red side and get some kind of massive counter pick, I do not think that Nemesis will be outplaying many players at the World Championship, unless it's like against a lesser play-in team that sneaks in, or something like that. But overall, going into most games, I will think that Nemesis is on the bad side of the matchup because of champion pool reasons, because of skill reasons. And I think that Nemesis and Fnatic will get baited into picking TF a decent amount, if that ends up being a popular pick. The way that I could see Nemesis' performance looking better than it actually is if Fnatic is able to get Nemesis onto scaling mid laners and playing slow early games that allow their team to like play throughout the game slowly, like an Azir or a Corki, where the goal is going to be to farm and then play like a low kill score game. Some teams will opt into that at the World Championships, but the good teams, I think, will not. They will try to force the issue early because that's the correct way to play League of Legends right now, in my opinion. Next up, we have Mission, and I don't know anything about Mission, so it's very difficult for me to put Mission on a list. I don't think that the league that they're coming from is as strong as the other leagues. If you want to chalk it up to like bias or whatever, go ahead. I don't care. I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about Mission, but we can take a look at the champion pool, and there isn't anything really out of the ordinary. So we see Syndra, Cassin, Corki, Orianna, Azir, Galio. Like, this is just generic. We're not seeing anything outside of what we expect. We do see Akali, so that's a benefit. So if there's a matchup where Machi plays Akali and the opponent doesn't, that'll be good. But I think by the time Worlds comes around, everybody will be playing Akali, or at least be capable of playing Akali. The last mid laner in the bottom tier is Jensen. And I mean, I keep saying this, I don't think Jensen is that good anymore. I think that the way that Team Liquid is currently built, it's a very good team for North America. Well, not a very good team. It's a good team for North America. They play the macro really well. They are allowed to scale into mid and late game team compositions because North America just doesn't like go after them in the early game enough. And I think that's going to be a weakness that's exploited at the World Championship for Team Liquid. So I'm lower on Team Liquid than some other people are. But that's basically it. I mean, in terms of champion pool, typical North American mid lane, Zoe, Syndra. We do have some LeBlanc, that's good. Zillion is unique for North America. Kog'Maw is something that we see every once in a while. I don't expect to see that much of it at Worlds unless it's like a very good team, because good teams are allowed to pick champions like that and force the lesser team to try and play aggressive, and the lesser team is going to mess up playing aggressive more often, which is going to give like a free game to the better team. Okay. Next up, we have Bjergsen and Power of Evil. So this, like, the way that the tier list works is like, not only is it the player's talent, but it's also the player's role within their team. You have to say that Bjergsen is more important to TSM than Nemesis or Jensen are to their respective teams. I'm not sure about Mission, but I don't know anything about Mission, so that's why Mission's in the D tier. So yeah, Bjergsen, one of the better shot callers and leaders in League of Legends from North America. TSM would not be at the World Championship without Bjergsen, so you kind of have to give him all of the credit. Not all the credit, most of the credit for that. Everybody knows about the Zillion, Zoe, Corki, Victor, Silas. I do get somewhat afraid by TSM because they will go into random periods where their pick bans are absolutely terrible. Like during spring, for example, it was very, very bad. I think that a lot of the time TSM, it's like there's a meta that exists over here. There's what TSM is good at over here. And then TSM does something in the middle where it's trying to counter the meta and be closer to what trying to counter the meta and be closer to what they're good at, but it's just a misread. It'll be interesting to see where they think they have advantages in the different matchups with other teams, because that's going to like kind of dictate how they go about pick ban. I would love to see some Aurelia and Akali for Bjergsen and Broken Blade. I think that's one of the good things about TSM is they are going to be able to flex a little better than some other solo lanes in terms of being able to play one champion top or mid. Not only because they're capable of doing it, but also they're willing to do it. They're willing to actually make that pick. Next up is Power of Evil. Power of Evil is one of my favorite players in the world. I love watching Power of Evil play Orianna. I'd be very surprised if most teams gave up Orianna. Like if I'm a team if I'm a team that's considered better than FlyQuest, my goal would be to limit Santorin and Power of Evil. Try to get them onto specific champions and then pick ban around those champions and then try to exploit it that way. Like I said, Power of Evil, very good at Orianna. And has played well at Worlds before. Power of Evil was on Misfits with Ignar when they were probably the two most impressive players from that team at the Worlds where I think they made quarterfinals or something like that. Just really good performances. A consistently good player. The only issues that Power of Evil really had this year were when they were trying to switch up the types of champions that Power of Evil played in order to react to Cloud9. And I understand why you would try to do it at some point. I don't think you need to do it on stage, and I don't think that the way they went about it was the right way. But I hope that they feel more comfortable in their style right now, because there are a lot of champions in this meta that Power of Evil is good at, which isn't that surprising because the mid lane champion pool is probably the most consistent across all the players that are here. Top lane's very close as well, but like in the jungle we see carry junglers and not carry junglers. In the bot lane we see AD carries that are better at supportive and utility AD carries, and then we have the AD carries that are better at hyper carries. And then in support we have the players who are better at initiating, better at laning, just better in general. It's tough to differentiate, but there are like certain styles of champions that some players play that others don't, like people who play Pyke or Bard very well, for example. But let's go next. So next up we have 4 players. We have Angel, Xie, Humanoid, and Larson. So it's pretty difficult for me to rank Humanoid and Larson because I've been like not anti Mad Lions and Rogue, but I've been underneath public perception of them consistently, and I think at this point it might just be messing up how I look at them. But my reasoning for placing them in the same tier as Xie and Angel is because I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're better than Power of Evil and Bjergsen. I do think that if Power of Evil was in Europe, he would be just as good as them, if not better. I think that there are chances that Power of Evil is just better than them. But I think it makes sense to like kind of give a nod to the public perception of Europe and say maybe they're right, and in this tier list this would make it like closer to what other people are seeing. But let's just go through it. So Larson and Rogue, I think that Larson is a good player. I think that Inspired and Larson are a good mid-jungle duo, but at the World Championship they are not going to be good enough, in my opinion, to carry against these other teams. A lot of it comes down to how I rate the junglers, because it's tough for a mid laner to feel comfortable to 1v1 without the fear of the other jungler being there. And 1v1s really aren't how you win professional games. It's more about how do you control the map, how do you get to objectives at an advantage. And Rogue has been good at that throughout the year, but Rogue has been good at it because they're playing against bad teams. So I don't think that their macro ability is going to translate well to the World Championship, and that's one of the main reasons why I'm skeptical they'll do well here. And it's also the main reason that I didn't like them to win the European Championship in the summer. That's why I was on G2 and Fnatic and Mad Lions above them. I know that Rogue outperformed my expectations for the summer playoffs, but ultimately I was correct. Next up, we have Humanoid. Okay, so and then for Larson's champion pool, like I said, it's pretty generic when we're comparing it to everybody else. We have seen Akali, and we've seen Azir. Okay, so next up, we have Humanoid. And I think that Humanoid is definitely a more important piece to the team than Carzzy is right now, because Carzzy is playing the supportive Senna style pretty often, or like utility AD carries pretty often. I think it's a correct way to look at the meta. If I had to pick between Humanoid and Larson, I would pick Humanoid. But at the same time, I think some of that comes down to the fact that I like Shadow a lot. I think that Shadow has very high upside. But we see Orianna, Akali, Twisted Fate, Galio. The TF, again, like I said, I think it's a trap a lot of the time. Because especially for a team like Mad Lions, you don't want to have a Senna and a Twisted Fate. So I would say just focus on getting your Senna compositions in and play champions that could that use the additional pseudo tankiness well. So like brawler type champions, and like heavy engaged team compositions. I think Senna plus Akali is going to be really good. I think Senna plus Galio is really good. Senna plus Orianna is pretty good. A lot of good options for Mad Lions. I hope that Mad Lions is able to have a good performance at Worlds, because they are the team that's most likely to compete with Fnatic and G2 for the next couple of years. But that's that. So let's get to Angel and Xie. So personally, I prefer Xie to Angel. Xie was thought of as like an up-and-coming mid laner for a decent amount of time. I think now that Xie is playing with Peanut, Xie can really shine. But I think that I'm just underrating Angel because I have consistently throughout the year. I was always on Huanfeng and thinking that Huanfeng would just be the hard carry, but maybe their read on the meta is like, Huanfeng could be a hard carry in like at this point in time, but the correct way to play this metagame is to have Huanfeng on things like Jhin, which I disagree with, and then giving the additional firepower to mid lane so that the mid laner is in a better spot to help out Peanut, because it's easier for the mid laner to help out Peanut than the bot lane. This thing keeps trying to crash on me. It's not going to crash. So yeah, TF. I don't like the TF games that LGD plays a lot of the time. The Galio was very good for them for a while. In terms of like making sense for their playstyle. Deep champion pool can pop off on Kassadin. Does play Akali. Right? I guess we haven't seen it on stage. There's a 0% chance that Xie doesn't play Akali. I don't know if that sentence made sense, but basically I'm saying that I think Xie can definitely play Akali. And then Angel. So Angel plays a lot of the generic mid lane champions that we expect to see. Also has a Lucian game in there. That's pretty good. Syndra, Zoe, Azir. Stay away from Twisted Fate, I guess. LeBlanc, Syndra. So Syndra, Zoe, LeBlanc are the champions we see most of the time. Not a great Orianna game or games there. That's kind of concerning. I think Orianna will be pretty important, because the other thing that might happen at the World Championships is a lot of like Hecarim priority, where you want the additional utility from mid lane and support to let Hecarim get even bigger. Because like I said, if you have these like Bruiser, Juggernaut type champions that get a little bit of additional tankiness and survivability, they just become even bigger problems. Next up, we have the A tier, which are the 3 mid laners that are not the 3 best mid laners in the world. So we have Yagao, we have Caps, and we have BDD. So let's go with BDD first. So with BDD, there has been a lot of talk about mid lane in Korea, and I think that Chovy and Showmaker have definitely been better for the year as a whole. My problem with Gen G is that they're very good against bad teams, and then they continuously mess up against higher level competition. We saw it at the spring finals and the summer finals. It's just a thing that happens with them because they're very good, but they're not as good as the best teams in Korea, in my opinion. It doesn't mean that they can't have a great tournament. I think that, especially with Ruler, if we continue to get pushed into a AD carry centric meta, it's going to slow down a lot of the games, and it'll make Gen G's chances of winning much better. But that's basically it. I think Clid and BDD as a jungle mid duo is not as good as a lot of the other mid jungle duos that are at the World Championship, and that's going to limit Gen G's upside because that's really where you need to be able to keep the game close in the early game. So my fear is that BDD and Clid are going to get outplayed in the early game. Due in large part to Clid's champion pool, that seems to be an issue in my opinion right now. But we'll go through where Clid slots in the next video. Yagao is a player that I think is not the focal point of JDG. So I have a tough time giving much more credit than putting him in the A tier, which I think is being charitable. My back hurts. So that's basically it. I mean, if you've been watching my videos for weeks or months, you'll know that I'm not a huge Yagao or Loken fan. I think their team's heartbeat is Kanavi. I think Kanavi is incredible, and you could swap out Yagao with a lot of other mid laners at the World Championship, and JDG would not skip a beat. I could very well be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. A lot of good LeBlanc games. I think Zoe's banned often against Yagao as well. So let's go to Caps. So I think this is the one that people are probably going to be mad about for some reason. I don't think that Caps... I think Caps is definitely the best player from Europe. I think that Caps is definitely the best mid laner from Europe, obviously, if he's the best player from Europe. And Caps is probably the most important player for their team from Europe because Caps has been carrying Perks recently. So G2's success will really come down to Caps staying at this level and Perks returning to world caliber, to be reverting to a world caliber AD carry, which I think is definitely possible. We've seen it before. And like I said, I want G2 to do well. If G2 wins the world championship, that'd be very interesting to watch, but I don't think it's going to happen. Because I don't think Yonkos is good enough right now, and I don't think Perks is good enough right now. But Caps does everything that you need. Caps has a very diverse champion pool. That's one of G2's best attributes in the top lane and the mid lane, is that they're extremely diverse. Jungle, they're not as diverse, and AD carry, when they get a champion they really like, they just try to run it consistently. But now we are at the S tier. And I really think you're splitting hairs and over-relying on recent performance if you say that you can tell a gigantic difference between these three players, Knight, Showmaker, and Chovy. So let's just go with Chovy first. If one is worse than the other two, it's probably Chovy, but Chovy is probably more consistent than Showmaker, doesn't have as high of highs as Showmaker or Knight, at least not this year, but that consistency shouldn't be thought of as a negative. I think that DRX is going to surprise people at the World Championship. I think that they are able to play the macro game. They can draft themselves into a corner sometimes, but I think that their macro game is very strong. I expect them to do better than Gen G. And a lot of it comes down to the versatility of Chovy. I think that Chovy and Keria are significantly underrated by most people. Well, not most people. By the Western analysts or viewers who think that Europe is very good. They're significantly underrating Chovy and Keria. Deft hasn't been performing well. I get it, but you can't say that, oh, Deft hasn't been playing well and ignore the fact that Perks hasn't been playing well. Like Perks has looked legitimately awful in certain games, getting picked out and caught in bad situations. Next up, Showmaker. I mean, you can't argue with Showmaker being a top 2 mid laner in the world. The Zoe games are insane. A lot of Twisted Fate, which I don't love to see. I don't like Twisted Fate as a champion right now. I understand why it works. I get it, but it's not the consistency of the damage is just not really there. You're like a burst mage that is trying to come in and flank the back line or get a pick. It's good when you're winning the game, but when you get behind, Twisted Fate is a very cheesy pick because it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to split push against you. But if the other team is anticipating a Twisted Fate pick, you're just going to get run into the ground with a side lane matchup that beats Twisted Fate. So yeah, that's that. I think if any team can get away with playing Twisted Fate, it's going to be Damwon because they've done it well consistently. And they're also extremely aggressive, so that kind of plays into gaining that early advantage and then snowballing it with the continuous picks. Last but not least, we have Knight. Knight is probably... Well, Knight was going to be considered the best player at Worlds before... Like, after MSI and after the spring playoffs, everybody was getting pretty hyped up on Knight. And it's well-deserved. I don't think that Knight is significantly better than Chovy or Showmaker at this point, but is having a very good season. That's undeniable. Basically the same champion pool that everybody else has, maybe a little larger. Lucian mid is another mid lane that's going to be important, but it is it's good. It's really aggressive. So I think that's going to be one way to show that like one team's mid laner is much better than the other is by picking Lucian and just steamrolling mid lane, because you can create very big advantages in the first couple of levels by playing something like Lucian. But let's go back to the tier list. So like I said, the 3 best mid laners at the World Championship are Knight, Showmaker, and Chovy. I think that Caps, BDD, and Yagao are in the next tier. I think that BDD has shown some upward mobility in terms of being more important for his team than he gets credit for. I know last split had an amazing split, but like I said, it was against a lot of lesser teams where he was accruing the player of the game points. Yagao, I don't think Yagao is the most important player on their own team, but it's similar to what I did with the European players. I'm giving Yagao the benefit of the doubt. Excuse me. Angel and Shie, Humanoid and Larson, I think are better than Bjergsen, Power of Evil, Nemesis, Mission, and Jensen. And I don't think most people are going to disagree with that, but I've been surprised by some of the responses I've gotten to these videos. So that's basically it. Excited to get the last jungle tier list out, and then we'll be all set to start making the other content for Worlds 2020. So thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you like this video, make sure you like the video and consider sharing it on Twitter or retweeting it when I send it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.